Get ready for a great show.
Black space is a place for us.
Real people with real issues.
Discussing real topics.
Black space.
A safe space for our community.
Hello, I'm George Middleton, your host this evening on this podcast episode of Black Space Live. The topic of our discussion today, we are going to examine the following statement and question. Men must understand women. Must women understand men for the relationship to work? So that should be a really igniting, provoking, thought-provoking topic to bring everyone in this evening. However, before we get into that, I would like to take this time briefly to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. In other words, say it with me, don't be selfish with this content. Share the love. Now, we have a serious panel tonight. I would have to say, probably the best looking panelists, group panelists.
Second that.
And I would have to say, probably the most attractive set of panelists.
All right, George. See that? Okay.
So we hitting on all cylinders tonight. There's a third component. What you see here before you is high intellectual caliber. They don't play. And y'all finna find out. If you don't know, you know. So let's take a quick minute to let them just say hi, greet themselves, and tell you all who are watching and listening what they might want to let you know. Let's begin with China.
Hi, guys. China here. 33, accountant, residing in Dallas, from Mississippi. Happy to be here. And that was a great introduction, George. It was beautiful.
What's that cliche? If it's true, it ain't bragging.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. All right. Welcome, China. Charmaine.
Hey, I'm Charmaine. I'm a 37-year-old consultant for early childhood educational programs, which has absolutely nothing to do with relationships, but I'm excited to be here and contribute to the discussion and hear from the rest of the panelists.
Welcome, Charmaine. And I'm going to use the old introduction for my guy, but he's got a newer brand, but I like the old one because it's still who he is. Daniel, I ain't scared of you. Bleep, bleep. Williams.
Man, it's still relevant. I am the Daniel Williams, aka Mr. One of One, none before, none to come. Still ain't scared of none of y'all.
Love it, man. I feel the energy already. So let me set this up here. This is going to be really good, and I want y'all just to sink your canines into this topic, okay? So here goes. Men at our base level are hunters. We love to conquer. We love the chase. We like the acquisition. And we like to conquer and dominate. That's just the male gene. Men typically, because of that, initially, as it pertains to the opposite sex have to initiate the contact or approach the female of the species first. Inherent in the genetic nature code of the species, the males, in order to procreate and perpetuate their genetic line, have to raise her attraction levels for us in order to achieve that mission. So, with that being in mind, what do the female species need to do? Or are they even trying to understand men in order to be successful with men as we are trying to be successful with women? Are women really investing their time trying to understand men, especially those who are interested in her? Statistically speaking, a lot of the research shows that women who understand men are most successful in their relationships with men. The reason why I would posit, because of this, that the reason why I wouldn't say, I can't put a quantitative level on this because this is more subjective, but the reason why some women may have a pattern of unsuccessful relationships with men is because they do not invest the time with men. It's not inherent for their survival. The leverage is on their side. For men, it is the basic component of our survival. And similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with the courting nature of the black widow spider species, but the female is larger and deadlier. And the male takes a risk every time he approaches her to court. And so, based on his primary survival, he has to understand the nature of what he's getting into. So, in many respects, in most species, the males are skating on thin ice in his attempt to seduce the female species. So, to kick off this conversation, I want to lay the base parameter out here by saying it is a man's job to attain the woman, but it is the woman's job to retain the man.
Ooh. They're not gonna like you for that one.
All right. Let's get it
Can you repeat
going.
that again, George? Can you repeat that again?
It is the man's job to attain the woman, but it is the woman's job to retain the man. So let's just do a round robin and get some initial response on this monologue that I just put out and get your general responses, beginning with China.
Oh, lucky me. So, while you were speaking, it brought me back. I actually read up last week. Female frogs, some of them will play dead to keep from mating with male frogs.
Whoa.
So I know that's to the extreme, but some female frogs will play dead to avoid from mating with male frogs. So when you were speaking, I was like, you know what? When he said species, he meant all of them, right?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
Your final statement, we've said it before on this show. Women control sex, men control relationships. And that is why, it's hard to stomach sometimes, but that's the truth. Women fall in love with what they hear, and men fall in love with what they see, right? So that's why, women are taught at an early age, don't go out the house looking any kind of way, always be presentable, always look your best, always look good. When you become of age and you're older, throw on a little lipstick, put on a red dress, to entice, right? Um, and that's a part of of keeping that man. But you got to get him first, right? Um, but to shorten it up, I definitely agree with what you said. And did you just the monologue, was it something that you read? Is that those are George's words? Where'd that come from?
Well, I have to give all the credit to the producer
Okay.
of the show, and I give him a lot of credit for this particular statement in question because I typically just try to facilitate conversations, and sometimes that generates a little bit of a tension between myself and the producer because he wants full commitment on these positions. And so I'm always trying to straddle the fence a little bit by being more objective in my facilitation. But I am a man, and so I do try to find places where I can fit in uh, uh, and do some personal disclosure, some self disclosure. But I try to use objectivity as my strength so that we can facilitate a really full throated conversation. In other words, I don't want me to be the issue for why we can't get the discussion going. So it's a constant push and pull. But yeah, this is the producer's brainchild. And I give him a lot of credit for this one because I think there's a lot of meat on the bone in this discussion. So I hear you by saying women control sex, men control relationships. And so I definitely have a question for you once we get through the round robin on this. Okay. Charmaine.
So out of all of the animals and insects, we went with Black Widow. Okay, let's do it. Well, yes. So I do agree with China. Women definitely control sex, men control relationships. And I think that women have a responsibility to understand the male species as much as possible because they just speak a different language. I was on the phone with a friend of mine today, and we were talking. She was venting, about her relationship. They just moved in together, and they're trying to find that balance. And they had a little disagreement, and she was saying, "Oh, well, he, asked me if I wanted to go out later, blah blah blah." But they're not really, there's this tension in the house, and I'm like, he's saying he's sorry. That's how they say sorry. He's inviting you out. So, yeah, definitely have to understand it or understand them and their language and how they love and what speaks to them to make a relationship solid and last.
Understand their language and how they love. Okay. Daniel.
Okay. Let's go ahead and piss some people off. We'll start with this. One of the worst things we've ever been taught as a society is happy wife, happy life. It's literally one of the most discourteous and one of the most ingenuous things that has ever been said in regards to relationship, and probably at the foundation of most failed relationships. And that is because we have now made it where only one person's happiness in a relationship matters. And it's not about what's for the best of both parties in that particular relationship. And it generally tends to cue where men are expected to make more of the concessions in a relationship. And over time, men stop expressing their unhappiness and eventually will check out of relationships. So, and then vice versa. Now the woman is unhappy, but because she's unhappy, that's when things really fall apart. Nobody cares when a man is unhappy in a relationship. It's not until a woman is unhappy within a relationship that things really start to become problematic. So definitely a lot of things that have been said, but until we get away from happy wife, happy life and get back to happy spouse, happy house and make that shift and that paradigm to where both parties are focused on in the relationship and treated as having equal value, we'll continue to see relationships struggle.
Wow. Okay, so Daniel came out hitting hard. So before I ask,
no arguments here.
Strong words.
yeah, I was going to say before I posit my first question, China or Charmaine, what is your feelings about the gauntlet that Daniel just threw down?
He said he wanted to fight, or no, not fight. He wanted to piss some people off.
Piss people off, yeah.
He's saying, do you go ahead, Charmaine?
No, I definitely agree with his his thoughts on that.
Happy wife, happy life. Is that a truism or is that a relationship harming belief?
So I believe the phrase or the saying can cause more harm than good. Studies show, a lot of men, I'm not saying everybody dies unhappy, right? But men, they have higher stress. Some of them on their deathbed have spoken regrets, right?
Wow.
I don't believe that one person should be happy. If I'm happy and you're not happy, then we're not good. Right? So, a lot of 2023 women, they're living up there in the clouds. They need to come down a little bit because men don't have to go there, right? They have so many options, so many choices, much more than we do. They can pick out of the litter. They really can. So their relationships are going to continue to struggle, as Daniel mentioned, if we don't flip the narrative. My opinion.
I agree. The phrase "happy wife, happy life," I don't think it was meant to be such a literal thing. I think it was more so, let me see if I can turn this down. I think it was more so men are so laid back, and so whatever the wife wants or whatever makes her tick or whatever, just, make sure she's good and the house is good, the kids are good, life flows. So I don't think it was meant to harm, but it can definitely be harmful. And especially now with the shift in society and how men and women are interacting, it probably is going to change that around happy spouse, happy house.
So you agreed with China that women control sex. So to both of you, let me ask you this question. Does the woman's control of sex in a relationship, and really think about this question, does it require the understanding of the full male psyche or only his physical mechanics?
No. It depends on what day you're on, right? Just to be honest, everyone that's having sex isn't necessarily thinking the next step or the next level. There's a lot of random hooking up going on. This is a hookup society. So it depends on the person, and it could just very well depends on the day. That's just my thoughts, Charmaine.
Okay, state that question again. Make sure I understand.
Does the woman's control of the sex in the relationship require the understanding of the full male psyche or just his physical mechanics?
Good question. I think it probably will. You probably need to understand the full mechanics, or at least have a good good baseline. Yes, men are physical and visual, but they're still human beings. So, I mean, trying to make sure that your relationship is in a healthy sexual state is more than just the mechanics behind sex. Yeah.
Okay. Daniel, where do you think I'm going with that question? How do you interpret that question?
I actually think that a woman doesn't have to have any kind of knowledge of a man from a psychological standpoint or the deeper man to be able to have sex with him. And part of what contributes to the problem is a lot of the times, this is why a lot of people end up in situationships, because they started having sex because they were physically attracted to each other. Months down the road, it turns out she's emotionally invested. It's still just sex for him.
What was that term that you used? Situation what?
Situation.
Yeah.
Sexual relationships that don't have an emotional bond. And so you have where and yes, that happens with the younger generation, but we keep saying younger generation as if the oldest millennials aren't in their 40s now, right? So we're really not talking that young anymore. But it is very possible for a man to be intimate with a woman for an extended period of time without having an emotional bond to her, right? Because really it's just about the physical act. The question is this somebody? And the challenge that then creates is, in her mind, if I am having sex with you over an extended period of time, and it might even be exclusively over an extended period of time, in her mind, that's now a relationship. In his mind, until we have had that conversation, just because we are only having sex with each other over an extended period of time, you're still not my person until we have said so. And I think that there tends to be a lot of hurt feelings that come from that, right? Because the woman's understanding is we've been intimate exclusively for an extended period of time. That's a relationship, right? And in the man's mind is you're just something to do to pass the time until somebody better comes along in a lot of these cases. So the woman's control of sex is yes, you control the sex, but the man ultimately decides whether or not this is somebody I want to commit to, or in my mind, do I think there is a better long-term fit for me that I might lose out on being able to take advantage of getting to know if I commit to you.
Is that the interpretation of the question? Or is that what we're talking about? Like making so I mean I agree with that. Yeah.
And you mentioned something. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You mentioned something twice. You mentioned exclusively having sex, right? She may be exclusively having sex with him,
Correct.
but that does not mean he is exclusively having sex with her.
That is also correct.
Yeah, and that's where China draws the line. That's why China is not with this new age of dating, because we got to make some things clear. We got to be on the same page, you know. There's a lot of foolery going on, and women have allowed it, right? Because what one will not do, there are
The other
4 or
will.
5 who's more than willing. So that is why he doesn't have to give her the title that she's wanting, because he knows she's still gonna be here. She's still gonna unlock the door for me at 11, 12 o'clock at night. She's still gonna let me do whatever I want. I don't have to be tied down to her. So
And it's part of the reason I was very intentional when I used exclusive in air quotes,
yeah,
because exclusivity can be just one party, but if one person is like, look, I like this person and spending time with this person, the intimacy is good, that's my person for the time being. And the other person might say, man, this is good for now, but I still think that there is a better fit for me. And so sometimes that's where that disconnect is. And not for nothing, there are a lot of men that will prolong that conversation for as long as they need to, because they understand, if I tell you that I don't think you're my girlfriend, even though we've been having sex consistently for 6 months, then we're probably not going to have sex going forward. Right. And so the longer I can prolong that conversation, the longer I can keep those benefits.
And how manipulative is that?
But this goes back to the understanding the psyche, because let's be honest, there's some women that won't have the conversation because they understand that if I have this conversation and it doesn't go my way, do I have the discipline to say, and if you're doing it right, what a woman says on Tuesday, she might change her mind on Friday, right? Because so if you're doing something right, so the question is, and that muddies relationships. It's an understanding of the fundamental difference between how the genders and the sexes approach even the start of a relationship. What constitutes a relationship? When are we in a relationship? That then makes everything that happens afterward that much more difficult to really kind of build on and sustain.
I think what you're getting to really gets to the heart of the matter in terms of the motivation of both sexes. So let me put this cliche out there. I know you're going to recognize it the minute I say it, but there's a belief that men find love through sex, and women use sex to find love. How does that hit you all?
Do men find love through sex?
This is you all have never heard this before? I guess I'm dating myself. I am the senior person on this panel.
I don't know if it's true anymore.
But that's been, so again, I'm getting to the motivation of the species. And that in terms of entering into these relationships and hearing what Daniel was saying, it reminded me of that cliche that I was raised up with. Men find love through sex, and women use sex to get love.
I think it's the other way around, possibly.
Tell me why.
Women are the receivers, and they are like we're wired emotionally, and sometimes sex and love can be interchangeable, for women anyway. But men, if there's a lack of physical attention, then they feel unloved. Right. So I think they need that physical touch to confirm the love.
Okay.
See, I do know where George is going with this, right? So what you're basically saying is, for a man, sex comes first, and eventually, if everything else falls into place and the sex is good, we could fall in love with it. And the woman says, I have this sex, and I'm going to use this sex as a way to get him to fall in love with me. Is that basically the understanding of that statement?
Yeah, with a few minor adjustments, but I mean that seems to be the pattern. If you just look at the pattern of most species, most animal species, the male in most species is tasked with proving himself worthy of the female's attention.
Just to mate.
Not just to mate, because that mating is not a small thing. This is life itself. This is to perpetuate the success of his genetic line. And the female is the one that's tasked with maintaining. Once he has made that connection, she now is maintaining and nurturing and providing the environment for development of the offspring of that connection. And my favorite species that I like to model this conversation off of is the lion species. The lion, the king of the jungle. He has two functions: to procreate and protect. The lioness does everything else. She raises, she hunts, she nurtures, and if you notice, for example, when the lioness goes out and on a hunt and they catch make a kill, before they eat, who eats?
The cubs.
Not even the cubs.
The man, the male.
The male comes in. Everybody else gets seconds.
See, I do have a slight issue with using the lion species, because in the lion dynamic, there's one male, multiple lionesses in a pride.
Right.
So we're really talking about polygamy now. And that, like, if you were to cross over and keep that same dynamic, which honestly, there are a lot of men that are practicing polygamy and a lot of women accidentally practicing polygamy.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
But
So
that's a function of demographics. And this is something that has to be said. No disrespect to the women that are on this panel, but a woman's value is greater as she's younger, in her, let's say, early to mid 20s, maybe early to early 30s.
Maybe. Hold on. You said maybe? No.
Maybe early 30s. A man's value grows as he grows, because his financial accomplishments grow. So a man is actually more desirable mid 30s to early 40s, and women are more desirable from 25 to 34 roughly. So there's that shift and that difference as well, where a man's accomplishments are his currency and a woman's youth and vitality are her currency.
Interesting. All right, so let's dial it back a minute.
I did say no disrespect to my esteemed colleagues. We're just saying in general.
None taken.
And you're right. So, you know.
All right, so let's dial it back real quick. Let me ask this to the ladies. Are men naturally monogamous, naturally polygamous, or just hoes?
I'll go with B and C. No, it's fine. Men are, and we're speaking in general, of course, there are exceptions to everything, Men are naturally polygamous or polyamorous, not polygamy.
Okay, polyamorous. I like better term. Better term. And why do you say that?
I had this conversation kind of recently. So I was explaining that I feel like it's hard for men to be with one woman. Sex is sex for them. You know, it's not the same for women. So, and again, exceptions to everything, but they can have sex with someone. Well, I feel like a man can have sex with someone and genuinely still love their partner. And again, that goes with understanding their language and understanding their, how they operate in general. So I feel like men are naturally polyamorous, but they can't. They don't live that truth because of society. It's becoming more acceptable now, but it's just learned behavior. You know, you hide it, you lie, you hope not to get caught, and
Is this from your perspective? Are men genetically polyamorous, or is this a socially learned behavior?
that I can't speak on. I would need for a man to kind of confirm that for me. But I feel like if I had to say, I would say that it might vary for some. I remember a past relationship where, my boyfriend genuinely loved me, but he just had some demons, and his weakness was women. Like I didn't question
His
his
love for you.
love. It wasn't that, but it was just, and he got it honestly. His father was a Rolling Stone. So
Yeah, the reason I ask is not so much whether it's verifiably true or false, but just what the perception of most women are to this question. How most women see men. Do most women see men in one of these three as monogamous, polyamorous, or just a hoe? And you're saying you see genuinely men as polyamorous. Okay, China, what say you?
All right. Well, I'm gonna go back because I was letting the other two speak on it. What you were speaking on earlier, men used to have to prove themselves. I think it's a little dated now. Men used to have to go to the father or uncle or grandpa or someone to date, court, ask for their hand in marriage. Men used to have to prove themselves. Not so much anymore. But to answer your question, I wholeheartedly believe that everyone has the ability to be monogamous and faithful. Men and women. That is a choice. Everything that we do is a choice, right? Now, I do believe that a lot of men have whorish behaviors, right? They have whorish ways about themselves. But can men be monogamous? Absolutely, they can. It's a choice. If you want to be a hoe, you just want to be a hoe. If you want to go out there and do your thing, have at it. But that's where poly and all of these other lifestyles come into play. Give me the option. Give me the choice to stick around. Don't take that option away from me. And that's where I see communication is everything.
Okay, so it's a choice.
A lot of women it's a choice. Absolutely. Everything we do is a choice. I know genetically I'm not a man, but I just believe that everything that we do, I have the option. If I'm a married man, if I'm engaged, I have the option to choose to be faithful to my woman. Now, will I be tempted? I have a friend that loves to say, "I'm married, not dead." Right? We all see, we all see good-looking people. We all see them every day. Every day, there's going to be someone beautiful or handsome or anything like that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if this is the oath you took between yourself, God, and your spouse, why can't you stick to it?
Okay. Daniel, what does the research say on this question?
I haven't done excuse me, I haven't done the research on this particular question, but quite honestly, we are just primates. And we have a proclivity men have a proclivity to being polyamorous, largely because our entire DNA is written for us to continue to spread our DNA, right? So if you look back at African plains or to the cavemen of Europe, you don't know if you're going to live till tomorrow. You don't know if the woman that you're laying next to that night is going to live till tomorrow. You don't know if how many of your children are going to live, right? Like we are in the first time in human history where a significant portion of babies that are born in the industrialized world are forecasted to live to adulthood, right? There was a time where probably 1 in every 4 or 5 children was what would make it to adulthood. A significant amount of young people would die at either birth or early childhood. This thing where people live to adulthood, 70-80% of kids live to adulthood, barring accidents or violence. This is the first time in human history where that's an expectation. So there's always been this push for the male. And by the way, the construct of monogamy is more of a Western construct than it is an indigenous construct. A lot of indigenous societies, even going back to Africa, monogamy is not necessarily the default construct. It's a construct that they have, but there are a lot of polygamous societies that we can trace back historically. So being polyamorous, being attracted to different women and their different genetic markers that they can pass on to your child, right? I think that is something that's innately in a lot of men, more so than societal. I think societal has kind of helped prime us to be more monogamous, because let's be honest, the best outcome for young people is a household with both parents in it.
Yes.
Right. We know that we have the statistics on that. So monogamy is the best outcome if there's a child that comes out of a union. But I believe that a lot of men are still learning how to be monogamous as men. And a bunch of reasons. I have a couple written down here. We don't have enough role models. I think that China was speaking about earlier where you had to go to, was it China that was saying you had to go and get like permission from like the father or the uncle, and those OGs aren't good representation now, right? Like you have a lot of older men that either never got married, never sustained a healthy marriage, don't know how to be good husbands and fathers. So then who's passing that knowledge and that training and that discipline, because it is a discipline, on to the next generation? And if you have 4 or 5 generations where they don't learn sexual discipline, and by the way, lack of sexual discipline isn't just a sexual problem and a relationship problem, it's an economic problem.
Yes.
It turns into an economic problem as well, right? And then the cycle perpetuates. So I believe predisposed to polyamory, but with the right role models and a little bit of discipline, you can build a man that has that once you take certain vows, you keep your word. And I think that's more than anything else, that's about discipline. That's about what is your word worth.
Well, our one of our regular attendees, the Shade Tree Intellectual, has stated the following. He says, "I used to be non-monogamous until I met my now wife. I couldn't imagine being any other way now." Now that is a powerful, powerful statement. So Shade Tree, what I want you to do is just share some of the factors that are responsible for you changing and committing from a non-monogamous way to a purely monogamous way with no regret. If you wouldn't mind sharing some of those, I think we could learn a lot from that. And then while he's doing that, I want to spice this conversation up a little bit because there's some real basic issues that present relationship tensions in most relationships. And so what I'm going to share, I would say, is our experiences held by many relationships. Before I do that, Charmaine, you were going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that I think one of the factors also for men and being disciplined to be monogamous can also age can also play a factor in that.
Age?
Yeah.
Okay. Say more.
After a certain time, you've lived your life, you've had your experiences, and it's time to sit down. And so I think that also plays a factor into some of these monogamous men that are polyamorous.
Okay.
I agree. I've actually had a man tell me that he wasn't a cheater anymore. I said, "What happened?" When I got old, I had to sit my ass down.
I don't want to be a player. I don't want to be.
No, that's literally what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." It took that, not having a good woman at home, not watching her raise your children and take care of them and you when things are good and bad. None of that, but just because you just got old.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my person to only want to be faithful to me because they got old. Like, no, that's hopefully we all get there, right? But I don't want that to be a reason. I want you to want to do it for me. But that's what he said.
Who wrote that song? I don't want to be a player no more.
Right. Right.
I'm not a player. I just crush a lot.
Right.
I do want to just say something real quick because Shade Tree actually put something in the chat that is very relevant to this.
Yeah. Don't read that yet. Don't read that yet. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, because
I'm gonna keep that to myself.
Yeah, we're gonna no hold on to it because don't forget it. But let me introduce this component here. Let's keep it. Well, the new generation say let's keep it buck. I don't know if y'all heard that. They don't say let's keep it 100 anymore. They say let's keep it buck.
Let's keep it a buck. Yeah.
Let's keep it buck. So look, y'all. Everybody knows. Well, not everybody, but relationship research says that the number one need for the male is sex. The number one need for the female is security. Generally speaking, when a man commits to a monogamous relationship, he is now giving all of his requirements for physical and emotional gratification to that one woman. When he's saying, I commit to you, that he is now saying, I'm handing over to you my ego, all of the needs I need to get met for my ego, for my physical gratification, for my emotional self esteem. I now am handing over to you. That means any other woman that shows attention to me, any other woman that has a flirtatious comment from me, I reject that. I don't find pleasure in that because my needs are fully, wholly, completely met with you. And the reality is, many women drop the ball.
I agree.
They drop the ball.
I don't know about that.
Okay, let's hear it.
People do what they want to do, right? You can be the best person.
Mm.
You can be the best woman, best wife, best mother. You can be the best of the best, and you can still get cheated on, embarrassed, and all of that, right? I have a friend, gorgeous girl, beautiful, um, educated, smart, all these good things, and her husband bought her back something, right? So you can be everything that this man has asked of you, but that still does not mean he's going to do right by you. I don't believe that.
And um and respectfully, like we don't really know what happens in people's relationships, so we can assume that she might be doing everything that she's supposed to be doing, or that is supposed to be working for them. But let's say she is. Yes, there are also going to be men that do what they want to do, but also I do. Let's keep it a buck. Have you have you have you or had conversations with girlfriends where you're talking about how you don't feel like it, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you be tired, or
Mm-hmm.
kids, and I've worked a full shift, and, what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so like, or I'm not into that, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And so, like, if you're not fulfilling those things, how do you then say to someone, you need to deprive yourself of your needs and your wants, um, so that I'm not having to be everything for you? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
No, I definitely agree. And of course, it also could depends on. I speak on experiences and just people in my circle. So there are a lot of my friends who are married. They all just waiting on me, child. They all waiting on me.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I'm trying out here. It's hard. Y'all got lucky. Y'all got really, really lucky. So and no offense to you and your friends, I promise you, please don't take any offense to this, but um I'm surrounded by women who are wanting to please their man, who are wanting to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, we all been there when we were young. When I was younger, girl, I ain't gonna do this. Now it's girl, I'm doing this. You know what I mean? So a lot of that just depends on the person, because especially the young lady that I'm speaking of, regardless of what she was doing or not, you are her husband. How dare you not only step out, but how dare you bring something back home? You know what I mean? So you can do what any and everything that you can to please someone, but that still does not mean they're going to do 100% right by you. Only way they're going to be 100% right by you is by that choice that I mentioned earlier. She's not the only married friend. I have a lot of married friends, and of course, no relationship is gonna be perfect, and they're not gonna tell me everything. I know that, but what I do know, um, the ones who are not just married, but they're happily married, they're pleasers. right? Um, they saw this firsthand with their parents. So that's just my opinion. I'm sorry.
Well, let me challenge you on that. You saying that um, there are relationships where women, women who give the best of the best. So let's drill down on the best. Is the best what the woman thinks is the best, or is the best what he defines as best for him?
Well, I didn't talk to him, so I don't know. And of course, they're not going to tell me everything because there are going to be some things that I keep sacred between me and my future.
Well, the
But
reason I asked the question is here's why. If I'm doing something for you and I really am doing it for you, and I'm giving you what I feel is my best for you, and I find out that my best did not meet your mark, should I be angry because it didn't meet your mark, or should I be caring and concerned that it didn't meet your mark?
was it communicated? That would be my first question. A lot of people don't know how to communicate.
Okay, but it doesn't matter whether it was communicated or not. I'm
It's
doing
not.
something for you. You wanted me to do something. I'm doing something for you. Okay, and you may not even have asked for it to do. I'm doing it for you because, from my understanding of you, this is what I think you deserve. And I go all out. I'm laying it on top, stacking it up, building on the bottom, got the sides, everything. It's all covered. And I bring it to you, and you saying, that's just not really what I wanted. Should I be angry because I invested all this time and energy and emotion to please you and you didn't like it? Or should I be caring and concerned after I've done all this and you tell me that it's not what you wanted?
I think the manner in which it's received dictates that. So, um, if you package it up in a with a pretty bowl and whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
offer that up, and they're just like, it's really not my thing. You can't really, if as long as they're being respectful, about, hey, thank you, but XYZ, you got to respect that, right? You can't get mad at someone because they didn't like what you gave them or what you're offering.
See, I'm a pop in real quick.
Okay.
Context matters. So I know it's an absolute question, but context matters, right? Early in a relationship, you can go all out for someone that you might not necessarily know, but you want to do something for them. And it might not hit the mark because you don't necessarily know them that well. 6 years down the road, though, 10 years down the road, though, you might do something for them that totally misses the mark. And so it's not that the action didn't hit. It's more the thought process of you don't even know me.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
You should know that.
And that goes back to what China was saying. A lot of people are not good at communicating, and it blows my mind that how can you share the most intimate parts of yourself with someone and not be able to talk about it?
Oh yeah, happens every day.
Not be able to discuss it.
People are. It's easier for people to be naked than to be emotionally naked.
Yes.
Right. Vulnerability. It's easy to be physically naked than to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And as a society, we've made it that because vulnerability is weaponized.
And I can understand that for a new relationship or something like that. However, if you have been with someone for a length of time, why is it that I know all the superficial things, your favorite color, your favorite cologne, but I don't know the most intimate details of you after years of being with someone?
Right.
Once again, happy wife, happy life. Women communicate, men tend not to communicate some of those more vulnerable things
Yes.
because it's really an issue of trust. Can I trust that when, and it does go back to, once again, context matters. If I know that my woman has a temper, when she has a temper, she's liable to say anything. Or if I know that my woman talks to her mom all the time and she don't have any barriers when she talks to her mom, or I know my woman has friends that they be gossiping all the time and she don't know how to separate things that her friends should know from things her friends shouldn't know, then I'm probably not going to tell her certain things because I understand that something that I might say to her might not stay between the two of us. That's a trust issue with deeper level vulnerabilities. I might not have issues about loyalty, but do I trust that some of the, and this goes back to that dynamic of what do men give up when they decide, okay, this is my person
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to put everything into. And this is one of the biggest challenges, right? And something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Most men don't have close male relationships as they get older. Their social circle actually shrinks. And so they don't have these healthy male relationships that they can lean on when they need someone to talk to. And so either they swallow it or they share it with their woman and hope that their woman is going to be willing to have that thing about her where she keeps it and protects that version of him, right? Because men don't like being vulnerable. Like a man, and just think about the men in your life. Like women, unless it's something significant, women don't like seeing men cry, right? That's almost viewed as a sign of weakness in a lot of cases. Like if you lose your mom, okay, that's one thing, right? But if a man just started crying in the middle of a conversation about something random, the weather, like you'd be like, something's wrong with that guy. So vulnerability is something that men hold very close. And it's really about the understanding of, and these conversations happen where why would you tell them that? Oh, it's not that big a deal. And for the man, it's considered kind of a betrayal of his vulnerability. For the woman, it's just my mom. That's just my sister. And so there's that nuance to that particular context that has to be accounted for sometimes.
Daniel said something earlier, and that's very powerful. And I think this is related to this thread of the conversation. He said, first of all, men are expected to make the most of the concession in the relationship. Most men will look at marriage as a win-lose game. In order to win her, he has to lose some things. And then he goes on further to say that nobody cares when a man's unhappy. But if the woman's unhappy, oh, you need to deal with that. And that's related to this question I asked in terms of who's defining what's best. If you do something for the person, is it his best you're using to define as the goal, or what you think is best for him?
It should be his, but it should be that what that person deems as best, the other person. I mean, everybody has everybody has their own way of how they receive love. So it's not up for me to say, okay, this is how I want to love you and take that. It's if I genuinely love you, I want to make sure that you feel that love, like you receive that love. So if, and well, I'll just bring up love languages. Love languages, since that's a popular,
Right. Yes.
term that everybody knows. But most men, I can say, was probably their love language is probably physical touch. So if their love language is physical touch, but me as a woman, mine is acts
Right.
of service, I'm not going to show you that I love you by
Yes.
um, buying you, or I don't know, buying you a ticket to a basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, have something that has something to do with how you receive love, like how you compute that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and you're hitting the rubber where you're hitting a nail on the head here, where it meets the road. The reality is, and this is my observation of most women, fortunately or unfortunately, are in the position of satisfying a lot of people. That's one of the roles, fairly or unfairly, that a lot of women take in relationships and families and intimate relationships, is they're pleasing, they're looking out, they're nurturing, they're protecting, they're trying to make sure everybody's okay. Sometimes to the fault of leaving themselves last, not to sacrifice their own immediate needs to make sure that everybody else is okay. They go to work and they're making sure everybody's happy at work. Then they come home. Now you got mouths to feed, and Big Daddy's over there sitting on the easy chair waiting for his plate, and all this stuff is going on. So the last thing most women want to hear is, "I didn't like that," or "You didn't do that the way that I like it." For most women, and I'm open to being, disagreed or counteracted on this, but for most women, telling a woman that what she did was not good enough is a huge insult, because her whole life is taking care of people, and you give everything to do it. And so I did all this for you, and you have the nerve to tell me I can with you, and then boy, the sparks fly. Now,
And that's, go ahead.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's human nature, but it comes at the expense of the male gratification, because whether he consciously or unconsciously understands this, he knows on some level that to tell her she didn't meet the bar, you are walking into an emotional landmine. So as Daniel said, you know what? I'm opting out, because for me to say anything of dissatisfaction is not going to be worth the trouble. I'm not going to get my needs met anymore, but I'm going to catch a whole lot of hell for it. What do you say on that, Shemay?
I say that goes back to that also opens up a few other things.
Okay.
We're talking about making sure that you have healthy boundaries, making sure that your partner is also sharing in the weight of the relationship in the household, making sure that you're not pouring from an empty cup, because yes, it is going to be a little offensive if I work so hard to do this thing for you, throw you a party or whatever, and what you really wanted was me to book, a staycation so we could have a wonderful time. So, we can only benefit from just making sure that we're both good, like everybody's healthy, everybody's being taken care of, everybody's being heard and seen, and
Okay.
just being conscientious of that and mindful of each other.
We lost China, but hopefully she'll be coming back. Dan, you were going to say something?
Yes. The root of it all is, once again, understanding your partner is critical. We talked about love languages, and actually for most men, it's and when men talk about being unhappy in a relationship, it's largely around not feeling as if they are appreciated. So most men that are unhappy in relationships, it's usually related to words of affirmation. And for men are actually relatively simple, right? If I'm doing what the hell I'm supposed to do, right, and I've made this conscious decision.
Yes.
I need a good boy. Good boy.
Yeah, that's all. Just
we need that. We need that.
My head, tap me, give me a hug, and don't make it seem as if intimacy is a chore, because then it's going to feel as if, well, I was better off back in the game, right? I gave up. Because it's never am I choosing one woman over another woman? It's, am I choosing one woman over every other woman that I could potentially have?
Yes.
And
Yes.
if this one woman doesn't work out, every other woman that I could have potentially had is no longer an option, right?
Yeah.
So for a man, it's, does this woman fill all of these needs? Now, something Charmaine said is critical as well, which is the role of a partnership agreement and a partnership approach to how the household is managed. Because a lot of the times, it's this really insidious and interesting and ironic kind of approach to feminism, where, you know, it started off as women want to have the same rights as men, and now women have the same responsibilities as men, and they're like, we don't like that at all, because we still have the responsibilities that men now have, but we still have our traditional responsibilities as well, right? But that's what
That's
you
a guy issue, though, for the most part. But you know,
when you say, all right, so talk to me about that.
in my opinion, men want the traditional, you know, the woman takes care of the household, they get to handle the kids, you know, they make the household run. I'm here to work and make sure that we have the the funds to, you know, live our lives and take care of our and build and all that good stuff, and that's what I should do. Well, it's no longer just the men doing that. It's now we're both doing that. And they, in men's minds, they haven't really adjusted to that now. Where now, okay, since both of us are now making sure that we have the funds and the ability and building, and we're both, you know, out here grinding, I can't just no longer come home and just sit down on the couch.
Go ahead.
wait for my wait for my dinner on what is it called, the lazy boy.
Right. Yeah.
The
Right.
kids still got
Because
to
we.
take class.
Yes. Yeah.
The kids
Right.
still have to do homework, and
Right.
they,
Still got stuff to do.
yeah, there's
Right.
chores around the house. I just cooked. Can you wash the dishes? You know, like, if we're both working outside of the household, then there has to be a change in the dynamics of the
Household.
So
And
I would counter that a little bit, because you're right on point there. Today's context environment of relationships require different responsibilities, obligations, and roles. But I think the principle still stays the same. This may sound very dated, but I think that we still are under this primal principle. The man makes the house, but the woman makes the home.
Mhm.
It's two different roles, and they need to be separate. Otherwise, why do we need each other?
You know, I watched this this video a couple weeks ago, and it was Kevin Samuels, and I'm not okay. Hold up. I'm not a Kevin Samuels advocate at all. However, he does make some really good points.
Yes, he does.
And the one I'm thinking about in particular was, someone called in and was saying how his ex-wife wouldn't follow, and she didn't know how to whatever take instruction, and he wanted an example, and one of the examples that he gave him was how, you know, he wanted to he was trying to make a decision on either something with the kids or something with the house or whatever it was, and Kevin was like, listen, you're in her territory, you want claiming alpha, and he doesn't, you know, Kevin Samuels didn't believe in alpha male and whatever that term per se, but you're wanting to lead the household and be the leading figure in the household. However, there are roles, and the roles that you are wanting to assert yourself in is her territory. So yes, you are going to bump heads. Yes, you are the man. Yes, you are. You are supposed to, take leadership,
Right.
not over. Don't assert yourself in the areas that you don't
Stay in
need
your
to
lane.
assert yourself
Stay
in.
stay in your
Stay in
lane.
your lane. Yes.
Stay in your lane.
Yes.
And that's the point, is that regardless of who makes the most money, who has which roles should be defined, and people need to adhere to their roles. And there are just some basic needs, because this discussion is about are women required to understand men in order for the relationship to work? Because I would say that by by most standards, a large percentage of women don't operate on the understanding that they need to understand the men they're dealing with. They operate on the principle that as long as he understands me, we're good. And there's just too much statistics that support that. And so that's why you get your Kevin Samuels and guys like that, because the guys are finding. I'm not saying they're all polished and they're all effective, but it's a real energy. It's like, hey, you know what? This is a new day. My feelings matter. I'm not just a penis.
To be fair, though, I will say, and this doesn't get nearly as much interaction. There are a lot of instances where, talking about the dead, but where he went after men for not being the type of man that they needed to be,
right,
to make a relationship work.
High value, yeah.
So not just high value as in high earning, because high earning and high value are two different things.
Yes.
And he was also very clear about that. Like,
yes, he was.
You can't be high value if you don't have a vision for your life. And a vision, because if you're going to bring a woman into your life,
you got a vision,
and you don't have a vision, then what you're really saying is you want her to be a part of, to partake in dysfunction.
Yes.
And when that happens, the relationship is doomed from the beginning.
Yes.
It starts off with the physical, but if there's no progression to the relationship, then the physical will ultimately not be enough to sustain the relationship.
And here's what I really respect about Kevin Samuels, regardless of whether you agree on any or disagree on any particular topic that he's talking about, is he's unabashedly and unapologetically male. Mm-hmm. He's not trying to kowtow. He's not trying to be politically correct, and this is a speech that I give often. Being a man is not a popularity contest. Being a man requires, on regular occasion, that I'm going to have to piss off the ones I love the most. That's part of being a man.
Very true.
That's just it. If you trust that man, however, then you're going to roll with him. You're going to roll with him because guess what? He's doing it on your behalf. And so we need to establish that. I'm a firm believer in that. So anyway, this is a really a fruitful discussion. What I want to do is kind of shift into the last section of this and bring back up Shade Tree, because he did his homework very well. I gave him an assignment. He did his homework very well. And I want to run through these 3 points that Shade Tree, or 4 points actually, that he brought in. And I think that women should really pay attention to these dynamics that Shade Tree is bringing out. And Daniel, you were going to say something on this before we get started. Did you want to say something now, or just start reading through it and discuss it then?
We'll go ahead and read through it and discuss it a little bit later.
Okay, so Shade Tree said, hey, I was at one point in my life non-monogamous until I met my now wife. And I can't imagine being anything other. And I asked him, what are some of the contributing factors that made you make this transition? He said, first and foremost, she taught me how she wanted to be loved. In return, she honored the way I needed to be loved, which gets back to Charmaine's love languages approach. This is powerful. She taught me. Men do need to be taught. We are not mind readers.
Also, different women have to be loved different ways. So how I've loved every woman before may not be how I need to love the woman I'm with now.
Correct. Then, secondly, she gave me freedom to follow my own interests and passions that made me feel seen, heard, and understood as a man/human being. Wow.
I think that's probably the most powerful one. And I think it goes back to the root of this discussion. That was the one I wanted to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
There is an understanding that even though we are together as a unit, we're still two individuals that have different things that we're passionate about. And it's okay to have those different passions, and that understanding that doesn't diminish our relationship. It actually bolsters and builds our relationship if we can appreciate each other's differences within the relationship.
And what's really powerful is that second half
Yep.
that made me feel seen, heard, and understood. Saying that you see someone, saying that you hear someone, saying that you understand someone is not the same as making that person feel like you have seen them, heard them, and understood them. Powerful, guys. Most people hang around people for how they make them feel. Okay, so third, we have impeccable communication skills where we can respectfully express ourselves to each other and not freak out that our partner is a human. Quotation marks, respectfully. Shade Tree is teaching us here tonight, y'all.
You're gonna have to get him on one of these panels.
I mean, he's welcome. We got to get him because the boy is deep. Shade Tree is a deep cat. Okay. And then lastly, we both went all in. Wow. Early on, I forbid us to have conversations that started with if we don't work out or if we break up. These are plans on how to fail, not succeed.
That was different.
That reminds me of the story. Who was it? I don't know if it was true or if it was a myth, but they went to war. The captain of the ships, once they arrived on shore and all the warriors got off the ships, he told them to burn those ships because they weren't going back. So that meant either succeed or die. That's commitment. Then he had one more last thing to his last thing. We are each other's biggest cheerleader.
Right.
Look, when you can make yours, so it's simple things, guys. When you come home, are you happy to see your spouse? Do you greet them with a smile or a frown? What's your tone of voice? Or do you take the pressure of your day out on the person that you love who had nothing to do with it? Do you ask your partner, how was your day? And do you really care when you ask? if you know that you're coming home, who, either one, whether it's the male or female, you know it's time to eat. Are you putting food ready for everybody to eat, or are you just taking care of yourself? You know, it's little things. It's little things. Little things destroy relationships much more than bigger things do.
Mhm. That's
But
where, yeah,
go ahead, Charmaine.
I think a lot of times if you do an inventory of failed relationships or relationships that didn't work out, whether you consider it a fail or not, you can start, if you think back on it, like you can see where the little things started happening, and
Mm-hmm.
then it was downhill from there.
Yeah.
You used to text each other during, while you were at work just to see, make that contact, and now you don't text at all until you and talk until you get home. Just little things like that that
Mm-hmm.
causes the rift and the divide.
You have to do temperature checks.
Go ahead, trying to say that again.
You have to do temperature checks.
Say more on that.
We need to see where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see where we stand. Are you happy?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I what you want? How are things going? Did I meet up to your expectations? We have to do temperature checks. And I said that if I'm able to be in another relationship, we're going to have them. I mean, you got to think about it. You have reviews at work. You have reviews.
Yes.
You have
Yeah.
annuals. I'm an accountant. I have monthly meetings. So whether or not I want to see y'all or not, here we are, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why can't we bring it over to the home? A lot of people, they don't necessarily. Some people, are okay with their communication, but they're afraid of the response.
Yeah.
Right. And we got to be grown about it. We got to be grown about it. Come to me. If there's anything that I'm doing that you don't like, or there's anything that you need from me. I know men don't really do this. I know this is a woman thing, but don't tell your friends about it. Don't tell your boys. Come to me. So I just believe that you should have to do temperature checks in your relationship.
I like that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to close this out. And typically, I try to do a round robin for everybody and try to come up with something enlightening, inspiring, motivating to say as we close out. But I want to do something. I want to flip it a little bit. I want to do a round robin, beginning with, let's see, I started with China this time. So I'm going to start with Big Daniel this time. And I want each person to say right now the biggest obstacle that's preventing men's feelings from being given the same level of priority as women's. One or two, because this is going to set us up for part 2 of this conversation. So starting with Daniel, the biggest obstacle in your mind right now that's preventing men's feelings from being given the same level of importance as women's.
I'm going to go with empathy. I think for a long time, men's happiness hasn't really mattered. And it didn't matter when when you only lived to 54, right? When the average lifespan was 54, that didn't matter. But as we're living longer, as you start looking at your life and saying, what did I accomplish? Who did I impact? What will my legacy be? And your legacy is also borne out by those that are closest to you. There has to be a level of empathy for what a man goes through, and a man has to have a level of empathy for what a woman goes through. Ultimately, a relationship is a partnership, And if you're going into a partnership not caring about how your partner feels, then you're ultimately setting yourself and that person up for failure.
Awesome. Charmaine.
I think one of them is possibly societal beliefs and having to unlearn what we feel like we know. Sometimes not knowing that it's time to unlearn some things. So I think that may be part of why women can't see men in the same light, as far as their mental and their emotional health.
Awesome. Love it. China.
I believe their escape said it best. What we need is some understanding.
Ooh, my favorite song.
Yeah, we have to understand what works best for you, your person, and your household, right?
Yes.
Because society is telling, women don't focus on anything but a soft life, and telling men that they need to be high value and things of that nature. But it's all of a relationship is supposed to be between two people. So those two people need to have to figure out the best understanding for them.
Love it. Well, here's my 50 cents to the issue. The biggest obstacle that I see that prevents men's feelings from being honored at the same level as women's is that a significant percentage of women in our community have traumatic daddy issues. And not having that positive early childhood development experience with a male in their lives has long-term impacts in the relationships that they have later. And so you can't be, or it's harder to be, I'm not going to say you can't be, but it's harder to be what you don't see. And then I'm going to let Shay Tree have the last word. He puts in a controversial opinion. The goal of happiness is a trap. Humans aren't built for happiness long term. However, if you are blissfully ignorant or content, sometimes those two can be interchangeable, it's a great goal. So that's an interesting, challenging opinion. So these are things that I want to bring into the part 2. You all have been great discussion. I wanted to shake it up a little bit. I was trying to really get a little more controversial here, but when you have great thinkers, you got to bring your A game.
I tried my part, man. I tried my part.
We got great thinkers, but I think this is a valid discussion. I really enjoyed this topic. Thanks to the producer for thinking of this and having such a thought-provoking way of presenting this. And I think it definitely calls for more discussion because what we've definitely been able to uncover is that there's some work to be done in improving relationships. If you improve the male's quality of life, you inherently improve the female's quality of life. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of times you get this whataboutism or even Steven approach. Well, you got to do it for me too. To me, that's immature. Mature people don't never have to say that. We already know that this is a reciprocal. Relationships are about reciprocity. So only immature people keep saying, well, what about me? What about me? You're already showing your hand. You get more ground out of saying, what about you? Think about it. So, hey, Daniel, I ain't scared of you.
None of
Me?
you.
None of y'all. Charmaine, China, y'all have been great. Thank you, Shade Tree, for your intellectual content. And to everybody else, have a great week. And until the next time we meet, we'll see you in the Black Space.